medical tourism, and we heard the two most top practitioners of the country and two of the policy experts. Right now, we move on to our next vertical, which is on cruise tourism. And as you would hear, the absolute amount of the potential that our country has, and which we will all work together along with you to leverage it. And this session will identify all those opportunities for all of you. I wish you all a very good session. Once again, welcome from Ashish Consulting CEO Faith. And thank you so much for Ashwin and to your lovely panel. And over to you, Ashwin, and to take over. Thank you, everyone. Namaste. Ashwin, you're on mute.
Yeah, tech glitch. Thank you, Ashish. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at the ITM 2021 Leadership Conclave and today's session on river and cruise, embracing the new normal. Globally, the growth rate of cruise tourism over the last decade has been outpacing the growth of land-based tourism. And given India's large coastline, intricate network of rivers, and diversity of geography, cruise tourism definitely has immense potential for growth as a tourism product in the country. In recent years, we're seeing an increasing intent on behalf of the government to develop the sector with the development of the national waterways and more recently the inauguration of the first full-fledged international cruise terminal at the Cochin port. Today with me, I have the pleasure of having four industry stalwarts driving the sector in India. If I could introduce them one by one. Ratna Chadda, who pioneered the concept of cruising in India in 1993, along with her late husband, Mr. Gautam Chadda, under the umbrella Discover the World Marketing, which was rechristened to Tirun Travel Marketing in 2000. Tirun focused exclusively on cruise marketing for Royal Caribbean Cruises Limited. Before co-founding Tirun, she worked with ITC Hotels for 12 years. And after that, she has represented RCCL, working towards creating a cruise market in India from scratch. She is also a part of the task force set up by the Ministry of Tourism and Ministry of Shipping, and has been contributing actively towards the development of the market in India. Our second esteemed panelist, Mr. Sanjay Basu, is a co-founder and chairperson of Far Horizon Tours and Adventure Resorts and Cruises. He has expertise in operating eco-lodges, river cruises, cultural travel, leisure holidays, adventure treks and safaris, and natural history safaris. He started Far Horizon Tours in '92 with a keen interest and aim to showcase chosen facets of tourism. He's been thrice awarded the prestigious National Tourism Award of India, 4 times awarded the Kerala Tourism Award, twice awarded the CNBC Award, Awaz Travel Award, and Assam Tourism Award. He's credited with the launching of luxury river cruises in Kerala backwaters and the Brahmaputra River Cruises, which are operated through Adventure Resorts and Cruises. Also with me, Nalini Gupta, with her varied exposure of 37 years, comprising 2 decades at Air India to heading Abacus CRS Systems, Regional Head, Southeast Asia, South African Airways, President Thomas Cook Travel, Business and Director, TCI. Being an integral part of the Interglobe team, Ms. Nalini started Lotus Aero Enterprises in the year 2010. Within a period of 2 years, the company has became a general sales agent for the European cruise leader, Costa Cruises. And our fourth panelist with us, Vivian Perez, who spent 4 decades in the travel industry, promoting high-end tourism to the Indian subcontinent. He is a director of Ventours International Travel, a DMC involved in promoting and handling the highest number of around the world private jets and 10 to 15 cruise ships each year in pre-COVID times. Vivian is also a member of the task force set up by the Government of India to promote cruise tourism. He's a columnist and panelist on TV debates regarding tourism and a member of the World Travel and Tourism Council India Initiative. With that, I would like to initiate today's conversation with Ratna. Ratna, having worked in the field of cruise tourism in India since early 1993, we're very keen to listen to your story of how it all started and what were the initial challenges you faced then.
Thank you very much. And thank you for putting this platform together to listen to us. Well, in 1993, it was a different story altogether, obviously, because at that point, we were still under the shackles of socialism. Nobody understood, or not even us, understood what cruise tourism meant. And when we were asked to represent this category, I was also taken aback, because there were a lot of challenges that I had already foreseen at that point in time. But we knew, and this is what we told our company, which was Royal Caribbean at that stage, when they asked us, how many passengers would you be able to produce? And we said to them, that's my late husband said to them, if you have the patience, we have the passion. And that is how this whole thing started. Yeah, imagine a situation in India where people were all used to tourism on credit. There were credits that were offered for as long as a month, month and a half, maybe. Ticketing was done and monies was collected way after the person had traveled. And that was the norm. So when we came to the channel distributors, our partners, and said that you've got to pay for this in advance, they were all taken aback and they said, you must be joking. What kind of a product is this? Nobody in India is used to paying anything in advance. Everything is paid after and disputed. And God help you if the money even comes in at a later stage. And that's how the tourism market worked. What happened was that for the worst still was that we had to collect dollars, the money in dollars, because this was a US based company. So there was no conversion into Indian rupees at that stage. And we were, as you know, the FTS only allowed $500 once in 2 years, which was a pittance absolutely for people traveling abroad. So there was no way that we could have sold this product at all in the Indian marketplace. However, my late husband worked diligently with the Reserve Bank of India to get the conversion into Indian rupees. He compared it with the airlines and said that it is a means of transportation. So therefore, if the airlines are collecting the money and remitting in dollars, we should be allowed to do the same. And Reserve Bank was really forthcoming. They understood where we were coming from and allowed it. However, after they gave us the permission, there was no bank to be who was ready to take the Indian rupees and remit in dollars, because they didn't have the permission. So we finished with that one challenge and then straight away went into another challenge. So the only way that we worked at that stage was collecting the payments through credit cards till the bank. And at that point, it was American Express, I remember. And because my late husband was associated with Amex, who managed, after the permission was given after a couple of months, to allow the conversion and allow us to collect in rupees and remit in dollars. So these were early challenges, and then trying to get that word cruise into the mindsets of Indians was another needle in the haystack. The travel agent, the travel partners took a long time and are still taking their own time to come to grips with this category. However, the customers picked it up, and people who had traveled abroad and had heard of the brands that were the international brands were quick on the uptake, and they kind of embraced this category and found that this was a good way to see the world. Like I keep saying, the world is filled 3/4 with water. So if you haven't cruised, really, what have you been doing all this while?
Thank you, Ratna. That's actually a very inspiring story and one of a lot of dedication and passion. With that, I'd like to bring the conversation to Sanjay. Sanjay, we're moving from the initiation of the industry of India to a lot closer to now. Being involved in a successful tourism projects in India, in Kerala and the Brahmaputra, how gravely has COVID impacted an upstart cruise industry in India? Will COVID leave a permanent scare amongst potential cruisers? Or do you think it's just a matter of time when we will see the industry up and thriving?
Thanks. Well, COVID did have an impact. There's no denying that. Like, it has had an impact on overall travel. But just like people are now coming to a understanding that flying is not unsafe. Similarly, in ships where strong SOPs are in place, there are facilities to do ventilation of the ship's air constantly. There is very, very less chance of actually contracting infection. It is bound to bounce back. I think the initial scare that was there, where the ship managements, they got caught by surprise, infections spread, and then people became wary that cruise ships are like a enclosed environment where a germ can spread, a virus can spread very rapidly. I think that is something that should be behind us. You know, if you take the right precautions, and if you do the right, follow the right SOPs, there is just no problem at all. As far as the future is concerned, I think we all know that the pandemic has a time limit to it. It's not going to be something which will go on for 100 years or 10 years or even 5 years. Or it's going to be over in 2021 with the vaccinations happening, and tourism overall is going to take off. And in that situation, even cruise tourism will take off. We are getting queries and even bookings for the fall of 2021, and that, I think, speaks volumes that the world is, though there is there are variants of the virus, and there are growing infections in certain Western countries, and they are still in lockdown conditions, but everybody is seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And when this pandemic does rest and it's over, I think cruise tourism will bounce back with a vengeance. It is it was the fastest growing segment of the tourism industry worldwide. And I think the revenge tourism for cruises that will come back will see a very, very golden phase from 2022 onwards, if not towards the end of 2021 itself.
Thank you, Sanjay. Vivian, I'd like to take a thread from the conversation with Sanjay. To your mind, what are some of the operational challenges that the industry is facing amidst the pandemic? Do you believe SOPs are truly helpful in reviving the perception of cruise tourism? Or do you believe it needs something more to be done? Vivian, you'll probably have to unmute. Vivian, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah. We handle the ships which call at India's ports, and we do these overland cruises and, of course, shore excursions when they come in. At this point in time, while we have bookings, and Sanjay is right, sir, we have bookings coming in for cruises which are supposed to come here in November and also next year. The thing is that the Center for Disease Control in America, because ours are mainly ships which bring in American tourists, keeps changing the guidelines sometimes every 10 days or every 15 days. So we are really not sure right now as to when a kind of a permanent guideline will come in terms of cruising, because these are rules which are being applied for US-based cruise liners right now. So we are actually taking one day at a time, and we are in touch with these guys. So we have the hotel bookings happening and all that. We have both for 2021 and 2022, but we have to keep watching out for guidelines which come out from the Center of Disease Control, because which is based out of Atlanta, and and those rules are important for the cruising industry, especially in the US. So for us, that's an important factor.
Thank you, Vivian. With that, I'd like to move the conversation onto some of the planning activities and landscape of tourism and cruise tourism and how it's been evolving. Nalini, having worked with the air travel industry, how important do you see a thriving air connectivity infrastructure to have booming cruise tourism? Do we today have that synergy between cruise and air connectivity infra?
Firstly, good morning, everybody. From a perspective of air connectivity, I'm actually happy I worked for more than 2 decades in the airline industry, only because it got me to understand with terms like the Seaman Fare or CDC. When I say CDC, it was the Siemens ID card, which will be the continuous discharge certificate, not Center for Disease Control, but CDC, or for that matter, air cruise packages, because a lot of airlines, 10 to 15% of their occupancy came from these packages. So one got familiar with that element and got to understand how important the role airlines play for cruise liners. So in that sense, they actually are woven to each other's fate. So if you don't have airline connectivity, you're not going to be able to bring people to the ports, because you have only that many ports and no more. A port can only be where the ocean is. So from that perspective, I feel a airline, be it if it's only within the country, in that case, domestic connectivity, or international connectivity. In this case, right now, almost 95% of our cruisers are going outside of the country to cruise. So if you don't have airline connectivity, you don't have any cruisers from India in that sense. So you would require airline connectivity at all times. So that's an important element. And I think from a perspective of even, let's assume you have a booming domestic cruising element and you have good domestic connectivity. Sooner or later, people will explore other itineraries of that cruise line if they've had one satisfied experience. So connectivity even internationally is important. So I think the fate of airlines and cruise liners are tied in very severely. Right now, we have good connectivity, but because of COVID, of course, there are no flights operating. And although there are cruise liners which have started operating in Singapore, for instance, I think Royal Caribbean Dreams operate, but they still depend on completely the Singapore traffic from that region, because we have no flights from India. However, smart tourism boards like Singapore Tourism Board still does virtual conferences with the Indian market, because for them, the source market a large portion belongs to India. So since the source market for cruise liners belong to the world, at any given time, you might have some cruise liners having 50 nationalities on one sailing, only because to fill up a ship, which is probably from 2,000 to 5,000 passengers, if not more sometimes, you need the source from the world to come in to fill those ships up. Of course, when you have domestic cruises, when we had our sailings from India, almost 50-60% were Indians itself, but they used to again fly in from different parts of the country. So cruise infrastructure and port infrastructure. So port infrastructure and airline infrastructure is a very important part in terms of ensuring we can seamlessly have both connect with each other. I'm hoping once normalcy comes in, flights start again and we can fly our people to the different parts of the world as cruise liners are beginning to put their schedules in place. And I do believe when ships come into the country, we will also have good, I read an interview from the civil aviation minister who talked about having 160 airports in the country. So that means you can bring in people from all over the nooks and corners of the country to different ports to be able to get people to cruise from our country. So I think going forwards, we will have that infrastructure. Right now, we are not ready, but I think going forwards, post-COVID, we will be in a good position to capitalize. But the most important thing is to ensure that we have more ships coming into the country as well to be able to make marry both the segments well.
Thank you, Nalini. Ratna, I could bring you back into the conversation since we're on the subject of landscape of the sector, the infrastructure and enablers. How do you see the Indian cruise tourism landscape changing in the coming decade? How optimistic are you? As a part of the Maritime Vision 2030, the government is keen to project India as a cruise development hub. How realistic and achievable do you think that would be?
Thank you. Well, the topic of the of discussion for today is what is the new normal for river and cruise tourism? In my opinion, the new normal is that India needs to take the lead now as a major cruise hub. We waited far too long. We waited patiently. We waited with passion. And somebody else stole the march over us. Albeit India is strategically placed and located in a location, should I say, where every ship that crosses over from the west to the eastern side and vice versa have to cross through India. So why did we miss the boat? How come, the other countries took the march over us? Anyway, the fact of the matter is that today's new normal is that people, the cruise lines are looking for newer destinations to go to, because some of them have been saturated, like the Europes and the Americas. Newer ships, new builds are coming out, which are huge in size. They need to position these ships into areas, into destinations which offer their same customers a newer destination to look at. And what better than India? I mean, we've discussed the coastline and all of that. The government is very high, the intent is very high, but we need to see implementation. No cruise line, no foreign vessel, and this is a known fact that the only way that India can take the lead is if we allow investment from these foreign vessels into our country, because that's already set. They already have the ships, they already have their systems, they already have an operating mobile hotel. They have the experience, which is the most important factor, because they've been sailing for 30, 40 years. So all they need to do is to move their mobile assets into a newer destination and take off. It's a plug and play. But we need to be ready for that. We can't have every day a new system or a new SOP or a new policy that suddenly comes up and somebody pulls out an archaic policy from 1959 or 69 when nobody even knew about cruise tourism and slaps it on the face of the of our parent companies. We've got to have a single window approach. The infra policy procedures, everything needs to dovetail and work together. You can have 160 airports. We can have different home ports, because then you have accessibility. But for us to have so many home ports, we've got to have systems in place. You cannot have different states with different SOPs. It doesn't work that way. And India is in a very unique position where we offer multi-destinations within this one country, within the coastline. If you look at any other country across the world, you will see that they home port out of one particular place, but then they are moving out of the country into another destination. We have the ability to string together the beautiful destinations that we have. We have the ability to string together both ocean and river cruising through rail network, through air network. We have everything that the passenger needs to experience. You've got, I don't need to talk to you about the resources of our country. We've got 38 UNESCO sites, which was given yesterday at the inaugural session. What more do we want? Why aren't we moving is the question that we need to ask of the government now. We know that the intention is good. We know that they wanted this to happen. Why is it taking so long to implement? And we are not saying that you come whole hog with the entire country. We can do bits, but at least let's showcase India to the world to say we are ready for tourism.
Thank you, Ratna. Sanjay, taking a thread from what Ratna was talking about in terms of governance and policy, currently we understand that the Ministry of Tourism is in the process of developing river, coastal, and island cruise policies. Is there any global example or benchmark that you think the government should be taking inspiration from in an Indian context?
So, I'll take an example of just mentioning yesterday, the Honorable Prime Minister launched this mega project on the Brahmaputra River for the development of cargo movement and cruise movement and bridges and so on and so forth, which was called the Mahabahu Brahmaputra projects. And in his speech, he focused a lot on cruise tourism, which was really heartening. I think the vision is there in the government and the will is there in the government. I think if the government, with a very open mind, like they have been doing in the task force meetings for cruise tourism development, which has been set up, take the guidance from the industry, I think the sky is the limit. This country actually can take examples from other countries, but really it has its own level of benchmarks. We have the longest river cruise routes possible on earth. From Allahabad, Varanasi, right up till Dibrugarh in Assam through Bangladesh. This would be close to about 3,500 kilometer cruise route. It is bigger than the Danube and the Rhine combined in Europe. So while we can take inspirations from Europe on river cruising, we can go way, way far beyond. And then we have the cultural experience of monuments, like you see in the river cruises of Europe, along with the people cultures of what you see on the Irrawaddy and the Mekong in Southeast Asia, and the wildlife of what you see on the Amazon and the Zambezi, Amazon in Latin America and Zambezi River in Africa. We have the combination of that. And then when in many ways, if you see, most of our ancient civilizations developed along the waterways of this country. So we have an experience to offer to the travelers which goes back with a history of 5,000-6,000 years back in time, as they cruise along the rivers and the other waterways. Coming from the rivers into the seas, if you look at the coastline of India, 7,500 kilometers, you start from Dwarka as a destination to Porbandar, to Somnath, to Bhavnagar, Palitana, and then you come down the Maharashtra coast with all the forts and of Shivaji. And then you go down Karnataka into Kerala, and you have Cochin and Kozhikode and Bekal, and you have Alleppey, and then around Sri Lanka, when you come up to Rameshwaram, Mahabalipuram, Kanchipuram, Chennai, up along Andhra's coast with Buddhist sites, and then on to Konark Puri and on to Calcutta, you possibly have 100 destinations which are there along the coast of India. And to that, when you add Sri Lanka, you add Bangladesh with the Sundarbans of India and Bangladesh, and then you go into Myanmar and Phuket and come to the Andamans, and you add Lakshadweep on the other side, you have what you are seeing is the future cruise destination on Earth, which combines the attractions of Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, Caribbean, you name it, it has it all. So you are really seeing a destination where if we move, and we move fine and fast, we can be seeing 2,000 ships on the rivers and 5,000 ships along the coast of this country, creating jobs for communities which are waterfront based, which has never been done, because along the waterways and the coast, either there's the fishermen communities or nothing else. And here is an industry which can unlock the economic development potential of all these remote communities living along the waterways and give them a sustenance which would be which would take their life up, their economic life up tremendously. So, and then another thing that we really need to remember is that most of the major river cruise destinations of the world, be it rivers or seas, tend to be in summers. And India is the only major warm waterways which has not been explored, which can give the winter solution to all the cruise companies and the cruise entrepreneurs of the world. So, the potential is so huge, and where we can go, we are standing at a very exciting stage if we can get it right. Thanks.
Thank you, Sanjay. Vivian, if I can draw you back into the conversation, what are some of the key marketing and promoting initiatives that you think India should take to catch the eyes of the global cruise tourism market?
The most important thing, Ashwin, is that, there is potential, yes, but you need to build infrastructure. For example, Dubai today is attracting a little over 500 ships a year. Singapore, I think, 1,000 cruise ships. Now, do you know at Port Rashid, these guys can handle between 20 to 25,000 cruise passengers in a single day. Just imagine that potential. You have maybe 2 berths in Mumbai, perhaps most likely it is 1. And I know what a struggle it is when the second boat comes into Mumbai. It's a struggle to get buses, it's a struggle to get guides, it's a struggle to just handle this. Now, unless you build that infrastructure, You can market yourself to the world, but they will come to you only if you have that infrastructure. Now, when I was researching for an article I wrote in the Economic Times, other than cruise ships, I mean, you also have the potential, as Sanjay was saying, other than river cruising, for yachts and sailboats. Dubai, with the opening of their new marina, has berths now for 5,000 yachts. Why don't we create a corridor? And that's what I wrote in my article, between Dubai, India, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and Lakshadweep. And you get these yachts. There are 5,000 yachts in Dubai today, maybe even more when you combine that with Muscat and with Abu Dhabi and others. Get these high rollers to come into Dubai, get onto their boats, come into India. And in this COVID times, you'll have many more people now wanting exclusivity of just being that boat only belonging to them. A couple of years ago, I went to Saint-Tropez at the invitation of the mayor of Saint-Tropez, and he was telling me that from April to end of September, they get something like 5,000 yachts and sailboats and other than cruise ships coming into Saint-Tropez every day. Now you just look at the spillover effect of this. And the other point is, with infrastructure, if you build exclusive cruise terminals, maybe Mumbai needs 6, 7 of them. You have that, you'll get these ships will come in, because you got to market this abroad to say we have the infrastructure. When you go to the Sea Trade Convention in Miami, I don't know if some of you may have been, it's an eye-opener to see how countries are competing against one another. In fact, it's strange, you'll see ports within a country competing against one another to tell policymakers in these, in senior positions in cruise companies, that this is what my port can offer you. Dubai will boast that we can get all the passengers off a cruise ship sitting in buses after doing customs and immigration in less than 10 minutes, in less than 12 minutes, in less than 15 minutes. That is how these guys market their infrastructure. So if I'm sitting at the head of a cruise company and I'm deciding itineraries for next year and for 2 years from now, I will select places or ports which can give me the kind of infrastructure which I think my passengers on board need. It's a struggle in most Indian ports to get anybody out in less than 15 or 20 minutes, and you're competing with Dubai on one side here and Singapore on the other side, because they are part of our competition. And so unless you build that infrastructure and somebody is enlightened to do that, it is very difficult to sell India as a destination. So you'll end up getting maybe 60 boats or 70 cruise ships a year. And Dubai is picking up 500 ships. The other great money spinner and revenue model is where, if you have that infrastructure, you become a turnaround point where cruises begin and cruises will end in one of our ports in Mumbai. Hundreds of passengers would come into a Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, fly into Mumbai to board the ship. Hundreds would get on because the voyages ended to Jaipur, Agra, Delhi, and fly out of Delhi. But this is the revenue model. Right now, very, very few ships each year are even doing a turnaround here because we don't have the infrastructure and you don't have the attitude. I mean, you have 30 buses lined up to go to the airport. The CISF will stop you at the main gate. And all these questions are asked. 20, 30 precious minutes we are running against time to get to the airport. You have, obviously, nobody has briefed them. So this is a struggle we constantly face. So, and I'm saying all these reports go at ports. The master of the vessel will write to headquarters to say, these are the problems at ports. So when we go selling to Miami or to Fort Lauderdale, Indian ports are not really top of the list for turnaround points. I mean, we last did a turnaround in 2013 and a smaller turnaround in 2017. But we have the potential to do perhaps about 30, 40 ships must do turnarounds here. But you need that infrastructure, you see, because hundreds of bags, thousands of bags will come in for flights out of here. So I think only when we build that infrastructure can we market ourselves as one of these great cruise destinations. And the same thing goes with marinas. I mean, in my research I was doing, we have only one marina for yachts, and that is in Cochin. 6,000 kilometers of coastline. And Sanjay is right. And we have a cruising period, a cruising time frame in India from October, when the southwest monsoon ends, up to May next year, at least the western coast of India. So why will we have just one marina to just take one yacht? And do you know Montenegro has 350 kilometers of coastline, which is as much as Karnataka's. They have 3,000 berths out there to attract yachts. Croatia has close to 20,000. Greece about 16,000. This is the potential which is, which exists in these countries. That's why sailboats and yachts have, will operate there, and when their season ends at the end of September, they could all come this side. And then combine that with the Andaman Sea, Singapore, Thailand. You see, we can have a party here, right from Dubai up to Singapore and Thailand, Maldives, Sri Lanka. And it's just going and begging. So I don't know when, I hope we wake up soon because the potential exists. But you have to build that infrastructure, private enterprises to come in, and government has to open up. You need to have customs, immigration facilities, even in the smaller ports. But the potential is huge. Shore excursions, employment, as Sanjay said, along the coast. So, it's all there. It's asked for the asking. Somebody needs to just tap the potential.
Thank you, Vivian. Nalini, if I can bring you back into the conversation. So we all know that there's an enormous market that is going out of the country currently for leisure, right? Now, this calls for some measures to encourage businesses to consider cruise tourism in India. What do you think private players could do or the government could do to retain this outbound leisure segment?
Firstly, why has the outbound destination group segment grown so well? It's grown only because tourism boards of the different countries have marketed their products so well in our country. The Indians are basically wanting to travel. They want to go to a place which is clean, which has got some good infrastructure, which is great value for money, safe, and they can shop, and there's activity. So a lot of tourism boards from Singapore to Dubai to just about every country is here, enticing the Indian customer or traveler to go to their respective country because they're good spenders when they go out. But they all are looking for a great value for that buck that they want to spend. So when they market themselves so well out here and then, of course, deliver on it, the passenger barely comes back. They again remarket the same destination. We have extra these things as well to go back and see. So do we do this in our own country? I'm not sure India is so well marketed to their own country, to their own countrymen. Do we do India for Indians? I'm not sure we're doing it so aggressively. So from a private perspective, cruise tourism can be a great option now, especially during COVID. Many people looked internally at domestic destination, low, close by place. People want to be closer to home. So I think domestic cruise liners or cruising or itineraries will do very well. But, listening to Sanjay, listening to Vivian, listening to everyone, when we talk about all the different ports that are there, all the different places of interest that people could go to, I think we're sitting on a proper cruise tourist dynamite where we're bringing in Europe, Caribbean, everybody there. But does our country know their own worth? So we need to first of all market it. We can motivate our cruise liners to bring their ships here. This is a capital intensive business. So obviously when you bring in a ship, that's a big thing that we're bringing in. I think what we need to do is like China did for next 10, 12 years or 15 years, let's bring international brands in here. Indians want good brands. They're very brand conscious. So they want to go on a Royal Caribbean. They want to go on a Carnival ship, a P&O. These brands are top of mind recall. So we need to bring the big ships in here, make it easy for them to survive, ease of travel. We have Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Shipping, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Tourism. We have Home Ministry for Immigration. We need to sensitize them to this whole new cruise traveler. We need to make cruising as a way of life for Indians. So I think while private players can bring in their ship, we need the government to help us make it easy to survive, to operate, to flourish. And when we flourish, like everybody said, we are going to give them employment. We're going to make the whole coastline robust. And we truly can make the PM's vision of the Sagarmala project happen. From Gujarat to Odisha, we actually are tying in people for almost a 28-day cruise, and they can do it in 4 segments. So we're tying in people for 4 cruises for the next 4 or 5 years, just within our own country. So we can have great visions, but I think the ministry should not be working in silos. Ministry of Shipping does something great, but the others have to tie in as well. So everybody has to be seeing it as one voice. There have been a lot of task forces. Like Ratna says, she's been on many, I've been on many, but we really have not still seen that much of a change. But when I heard Ratna's story about it being even difficult to remit in 93, 95, and how Gautam worked very hard to talk to RBI and get those changes made. I feel things, if those things are sorted out, I'm sure the challenge will get sorted out. And I'm sure with all of us continuously telling the country that what all we can do and make sure India is showcased well for our countrymen, people from the outbound travelers will start looking at India more at a more attractive way and a more attractive way. And imagine even the foreigners, the inbound, it'll help even the inbound business because India will be showcased beyond the Golden Triangle and the God's own country and Goa. There is so much more to see. And what better way than a cruise liner? So, or a river ship or a river cruise. So I think we are here at the right time, at the right place. We just need to keep the momentum going. So in fact, I'm glad we are on these kind of panels and I'm happy that we are here trying to make as many people like me, it's like converting the converted, but people like the out there, the ministries, the required stakeholders need to also know the opportunity and get them to buy into this opportunity and potential of the country.
Thank you, Nalini. Ratna, so what are some of the potential issues that investors in the cruise industry end up facing, which are peculiar to India? And do you see that scenario has eased up or it's changed over the last decade?
Yeah, before I take your question, I just wanted to add to what Vivian and Nalini were saying.
Sure.
Talking about the landscape and the challenges, you know, a place like Santorini, if you've been there ever on a cruise ship, is hugely challenged because they have a very, very small corridor for cruise passengers. Yet, there are hundreds of ships calling on that destination. And these guys have learned the art to maneuver people, passengers, so that you don't have to crowd around that one little strip of concrete where people are standing in queues in the summer heat, trying to get onto that cable car to go up to the mainland. Okay. Croatia, small place, 40,000 people, 400 ships calling there in a day. Okay, Croatians are trying to get rid of the ships because the locals are finding it a challenge and they have to run away from their homes during the summer months. Yet, I mean, look at our coastline. We are widespread. We don't have to congregate in one area. And it's not as if we are not aware of what is going on. We don't even need brick and mortar to build a cruise terminal. Today, you get very nice, very plush, nice, luxurious marquees, put it up and get going. We don't need the kind of investment that's going into the Mumbai port to come up with a port terminal. What we need is, and coming to your next question, what is it the challenges that the cruise lines are facing? Get the policies and procedures in place. We cannot take, for a cruise ship calling on India for 12 hours or 8 hours, you cannot be standing in queues to clear a 6,500 passenger ship for 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever it takes for the immigration to do a face-to-face biometric test. It cannot. And then you have the CISF on top of that doing the same, similar checks. And then by the time you get out into the cruise buses, if you get one, like Vivian said, sometimes there is a scramble and go around doing the tour, you're already tired. What are you doing in our country? There is no time for them to spend their money where their mouth is and to get our economy going. They're just coming here, touching the tip of the iceberg and going back. We need our cruise ships to spend more time so that they can see more of the country. And you've just heard all my fellow panelists telling you that a cruise ship is a composite facet of travel. Total. Hotel, food, recreation, entertainment, spa, shore excursions, shopping. No other service provider gives you everything on one platter. And because we are a composite whole and we encompass all the facets of tourism, this is a perfect example of getting your economy, employment, your foreign exchange, the showcase your country to your fellow men. You can even do landlocked destinations, as was just discussed, because you have the ability to sail across from Dwarka up to Calcutta and even go into foreign ports that are close by. And those guys are much smaller countries. Phukets and the Myanmars and the Bangladeshis are much smaller, and they are eager and really anxious to link up with India. I mean, can you imagine the whole ecosystem? Our foreign principals keep telling us that if you keep changing your policies every day, how do you expect us to come and invest in the country? After all, this is heavy investment for a cruise ship to move into our country. And if you go back in history and time, you know that some cruise lines had to fold up and leave the country because suddenly the policy changed overnight. So to get a little bit more, somebody within the powers that be needs to have a wider and a larger picture of what is it that we are bringing into the country, to get a little bit of more on the customs side or on your immigration side or on your CISF side or security side. I'm not saying that we should compromise the security and safety of our country. I'm not saying that at all. But we've got to have systems in place that will make our cruise lines feel that, yes, we are interested and we are serious about what we are saying. I was at a conference, at a sea trade conference, just to give you a small example, in China a couple of years ago, in Shanghai. I got off the podium and I had 5 heads of cruise lines standing over my head saying, what is going on in your country? We had just changed the customs duty, where from 1959 that archaic thing had been pulled out, and we slapped the cruise lines with the custom duty on a self-assessment kind of thing, where they said everything that's consumed, you've got to pay customs. It's not being taken out of the ship. You're consuming it on board like you would in a hotel. And as they are saying, are you serious? You're here, you're talking at a international forum, and this is what is going on. Do you even know what's going on there? Because I was, far away. And when I called I think it was Nalini that I called, and she said, yes, this happened last night. Because somebody in one of the each state works in silo. We cannot sell a country in silos. We cannot. So there are investment challenges, but we need to clear the canvas and give a clear message to there's no point in going to these sea trades and going to Powwow and going to Miami and all of us wasting our time. We need to go as a composite, holistic, one country presenting the opportunity, and whatever policies we have should be there should be long lasting for 10 years at least, so that the world knows and these cruise lines know that we are serious about our business.
Thank you, Ratna. Sanjay, if we could move this conversation to how do you think cruise tourism really helps boost local ecosystems around cruise circuits? What do you think cruise players could do to take advantage of off-cruise tourist activities?
Ashwin, along the rivers or the coastlines, like I mentioned, apart from the agrarian and the fishing or fishery-based communities, there has really not been much economic activity. And because of lack of accessibility, many times, in the rivers, these villages are part of the floodplains. The roads are not maintainable. Road access is a little difficult. And they're not on the main rib of transportation and communication. They tend to be a little off that. The only way that these communities can benefit and grow economically is really on the back of cruise tourism. Because the ships being water-based will approach them from the waterfront. What is required is the water to land connectivity, which we need to find, like Ratna mentioned about putting some floating jetties. A floating jetty can cost anything from 5 lakhs to a 1 crore requirement. It's not a big ticket investment. And instead of just focusing, of course, we have to focus on the 5-6 big ports where cruise terminals are being developed with hundreds of crores worth of investments. But along with that, if we were to pick up all these smaller destinations, I named a few previously, and some of my co-panelists have also mentioned about that. If small water to land connectivity issues are solved, we can create on the rivers possibly 1,000 destinations in the different rivers, and on the sea coast, hundreds of destinations where small to medium sized cruise ships can come, whereas the big would go only into the big ports. Now, just giving an example, I built my first river cruise boat in 1998, 22 years back, and or 23 years back, and that was in Kerala backwaters. When I built my boats, there were hardly any cruise activities happening in the Kerala backwaters. It was almost like an unknown destination, and we practically pioneered it from scratch. And then in 2002, we were fortunate because the then Honorable Prime Minister Vajpayee ji came to Kumarakom, and then he boarded our boat and did a day of cruising in the Vembanad Lake. And the whole destination of the Vembanad Lake and the Kerala backwaters just took off because it was front page news, and the photograph was there. And today there are possibly about 1,000, 1,400 boats in the Kerala backwaters, and a lot of them are owned or operated and staffed by people who are waterfront based communities. We built our cruise ship on the Brahmaputra River in 2012, 12-13, and again the Brahmaputra, it had like a boat there, and now there are 3 boats there. But that destination has been rated by the Sunday Times of UK as being amongst the top 50 adventure holidays on earth. And our ship has been rated as one of the top 10 river cruise ships of the world. 120 international publications, plus TV channels like Nat Geo People Channel have carried multiple features on the cruise there. And again, who are the communities that are benefiting? We stop at a village, we bring economic development to a village, an agrarian village, a weaver's village, a tribal's village, a village with a temple, and so on and so forth, or some tea plantations with planter communities there. So the money goes very strongly into the local communities. And if there are, instead of 3 ships there, if there are about 50 or 60 ships there, which is very possible because for example, the Brahmaputra is the world's only river cruise destination under the shadows of over 7,000 meter high snow-covered Himalayan mountains. It is spectacular. With those 50, 60 ships, you will see the communities out there benefit. And then those communities will start creating small little boats of their own. They might not have a big luxury cruise ship, but they will bring in small boats like it happened in Kerala. And they will start becoming entrepreneurs and gain economic benefit from there. So the only way, if we are going to turn the fisheries communities and the agrarian communities along the waterways into economic benefit, which takes them away from that agrarian and fishery based economic activity, it will be through cruise tourism. And nothing but cruise tourism. Only one solution is required, 2 actually. One is the water to land connectivity with a floating platform, and the second is a road connectivity to the floating platform. And you will create, and the ships will come by the private entrepreneurs. I've built 3 ships, 3 boats in this country. This country is very capable of building cruise ships. If the government gives a little impetus to the shipbuilding part of it, you will see hundreds of cruise ships being built in this country of various sizes. You will see cruise operators develop who are both selling and operating and building cruise ships in this country under, it can be Make in India program or whichever. But literally this industry can go from Make in India to Incredible India, everything combined together to bring in economic development for the local communities on the waterfronts. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. Vivian, I was reading one of your articles in the Economic Times where you'd mentioned about the Konkan Riviera and the Malabar Riviera. Around that, how important do you think it is for India to develop theme-based coastal destinations for cruise tourism? Also, do you see a major role of island development in tapping our future potential? Vivian, you'd have to unmute, please.
Yeah, we have discussed this earlier also, and I think again it boils down to the same thing I said is infrastructure. So if countries like Dubai and Singapore and Sri Lanka today also has berths for close to 75 of these smaller boats. You see, we should not really, while you can concentrate on the big boats coming in, there is also potential for the smaller boats. So I think a lot of these smaller coastal towns can make do with these smaller boats coming in. Now, something like Karwar, for example, you have, say, infrastructure built maybe for 5 or 6 or maybe 10, yachts to come in there. Now, from there, you can get down to the forest called Dandeli, do whitewater rafting. So there's a lot of offshore which you can do. Some of these yachts, very interestingly, also have helipads on board. So you can have a helicopter land there. These guys get on board, take them to Hampi, bring them back in the evening, or maybe they do overnight there, bring them back. So all these, the spillover effect of building infrastructure for yachts, sailboats is amazing, and what it can create in the coastal areas, smaller towns, will be a game changer. So I think that's where somebody needs to study this model. Private enterprise will come in, but I think government needs to rework this thing of, again, will boil down to benefits in terms of taxes. If you're picking up gasoline for stuff like this, if they're foreign exchange earners, give them those benefits. So I think a lot of that, will have to happen. And maybe just studying the Dubai model and the Singapore model for us should be good enough for us to kind of rework that out here because we have 6,000 kilometers of coastlines, I'm sure. There are so many towns with small, and Sanjay mentioned forts in Maharashtra. And I've been talking to the managing director of Maharashtra Tourism Development Corporation on this, and they are so keen. It took just one entrepreneur in Mumbai, a guy called Ashim Mongia, who's running something called M2M Ferries now, to bring in that ro-ro boat in there, which is roll-on, roll-off boat. That boat carries about 150 cars. It carries about 1,000 passengers. And overnight, since they introduced it a couple of months ago, the entire landscape across Mumbai harbor from Mandwa to Alibag, Kashid has all changed, because suddenly the wonderful beaches across the harbor are just 1 hour boat ride away, rather than doing 3 and 4 hours, around Mumbai, around Vashi and Panvel and all, when you came to these areas. So it just took just the introduction of that roll-out ferry, which has brought a sea change into all those beaches along the Maharashtra coast, at least for about 100 kilometers. So that's the change which can come about with just introduction of certain facilities or infrastructure. Land prices have gone up, and suddenly overnight you have Airbnb places, people giving out their homes for rentals, because everything is now, you can get there in less than an hour and a half or 2 hours, rather than 5 and 6 hours earlier. So change can happen. It's just that somebody has to think about it and then work towards what, and the government has to, be flexible with rules, regulations, and things like that, because so many players come into play. Coastal regulatory zones, the Navy comes into play, coastal police come into play, Coast Guard comes into play. If they're not in sync with one another, a lot of this thing will be very difficult to achieve. Potential exists, as I keep saying, but it's just that people have to be in sync in terms of thinking. That's all one goal. Now, can you have one authority to do that? That would be ideal. And I think that authority should be somebody from the Prime Minister's office who sits in that office, who then is able to control and have the power over these other ministries. Otherwise, again, we'll be shooting in the dark. Too many people will be involved to get these clearances and permission. If you want to make this a game changer in a sense, of tapping this wonderful potential which we have.
Thank you, Vivian. Nalini, a very influential part of cruise tourism is onboard hospitality. Now, how are we placed in terms of skilled human resources? Do you think we're prepared for a boom in the cruise tourism industry the way the government is talking? Nalini, you need to unmute, please.
I'm sorry. In terms of the hospitality element, yes, the cruise ship is like you're in a 5-star hotel. So right now, where do the people get employed from? The recruiting companies source the people from hospitality courses. There are hospitality courses which prepare people for the hospitality sector, but those courses don't equip you to work on board a ship. So very often they are told to get 1 or 2 years experience working in a 5-star hotel to prepare them to reduce the learning curve of having to work on board a ship. And that becomes a poaching ground for the recruiting companies. And right now we do have any given ship will have as many as 200 to 700 Indian crew on board. So we are a big contributor to the international component of employees on board a ship. In fact, the third highest. The first being the Philippines, then Indonesians, and then the Indians. Why is the Philippines the highest? I would think it's also because they have very focused cruise courses for people going on board a ship. There are proper programs. The government has actually had a lot of institutes which are open and they support it. With the result, people so cruise liners find it attractive getting them. They are service oriented. They know some element of English. They are ready to go. Whereas Indians who come, who are taken from these different 5-star hotels, still have some element of a learning curve. So I think we, in any case, take a lot of Indians come on board, are working on board. But I think if we get a little bit more support and we get more cruise focused programs, we'll be better ready for the new opportunity. And in a way, I think Indians also score a star in terms of being able to be good, hardworking people. They know English. They work 7 days a week. Working on board a ship is not very easy. For 6 months of the year, they are away from home. So probably once you have domestic cruises, people will be happy to work on board a ship closer to home. But I think to be able to get a better power force, it's good to have institutes which will become useful for people to be ready to get on board a ship and start working there. But I think independently, I think the government also needs to, I think the potential of employment on board the ship is still high. So I think the government needs to step in terms of being able to actually even have, mandates where government to government mandates whereby, for instance, when people go to another airport and they just go to the airport to be able to connect to a ship, an Indian needs to go through a visa process. But very many countries, like for a Schengen country, a European doesn't have to have so many visas. There is a kind of a tie-in they have with the Minister of External Affairs, which allows them to just transit through. The CDC is the only form of identity they require along with their travel document. So I think the government should start getting and looking at employment on board ships, not only when ships are in India, but all over the world, making it easy for an Indian seaman to be able to be recognized world over as a good employee on board a ship. So I think we are there, but not completely ready yet to capitalize on the opportunity.
Thank you, Nalini. I think with that, we reach our time for today. I would like to thank you all for joining us today and a very informative session for all the participants in the ITM 2021 event. With that, Ashish, over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. Thank you, all the panelists. I hope all our viewers enjoyed this absolutely from the heart conversation that we had around the water bodies of India and the amazing potential, as you would have heard, that we have, not only from within the country, but in terms of how our country can become a network or be connected to the neighboring destinations. We are going to take forward all of these points to ensure that they become part of some kind of an action plan, some kind of uh, milestones with the concerned authorities, and each day is a beginning, and we will all work with the concerned stakeholders, which was the objective, to take the best voices from the industry and with the government to ensure that we take all of these points forward. Thank you, all our viewers, for joining in and from around the world. We are taking a short time out, and we should be back with the next session, which is even building on the absolute potential of the complete natural and responsible tourism potential that India has. And I look forward to all of you connecting on that session. And once again, Ashwin, thank you very much. Vivian, thank you so much for taking our time. Ratna, as always, thank you. Sanjay, thank you very much for all the points. Nalini, thank you so much for coming in and taking out your time. Thank you all. This is Ashish from Conservancy of Faith. We're signing off now, and I request our viewers to log into our next module on the designated time. Thank you. Namaste from India. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.